Hey everyone, it's Carissa. Thanks for stopping by today. Today I wanted to talk to you about 5 not so basic ways to use your basic nesting dies. Now, most of us seasoned crafters have something like this in our stash, and oftentimes when new crafters come to me and say, "What should I pick up?" I think basic shape dies are one of those things that I usually tell them because there's so many things that you can do with these. Now, today I'm going to only be using circle dies. I'm going to be using the My Favorite Things Circle Stacks 1 set and Circle Stacks 2. The only difference in these is the sizes. So by buying both of these sets, I have plenty of sizes. I have a lot of variety, and I can do a lot of things with these circle dies, and I'm going to show you those today. But keep in mind, even though I'm using circles today, you could use any basic shapes like squares, rectangles, stars, hearts. The sky is really the limit. So let's get into our first technique today, and that is a window. We're going to play a little peekaboo here. We're going to take this circle die here, and I have an A2 size card base. This is cut to 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4.25. And this little circle here is from the Circle Stacks 2 set. And I am just positioning it in the bottom right-hand corner, leaving a little bit of room around the edges. And I'm holding it in place with some delicate surface masking tape. Then I'll just run it through my die cut machine. I'm using my regular wafer thin die sandwich here. And when I take this out of the die cut machine, you can see I now have a card with a fun window. And this is kind of fun because you can put things on the inside that show when the card is closed. Now, on this same card, I decided to incorporate another technique, and that's creating a frame. So what I have here is the same circle that I created my window with, and that's the inner circle that you're seeing me position there. And I have one circle larger than that. And what I'm going to do is use that masking tape to kind of hold them together. And you can see I've positioned them to where there's an equal amount of space between them all the way around. Now, it's really important if you want your frame to fit the window that you've created, you have to use the same size die on the inside of that frame that you used to create the window. So now that I have these positioned and I have the masking tape holding them in place so that I can be sure that they don't shift and I don't end up with a wonky frame, I'm going to run them through my die cut machine, and I'm just using some American Crafts gold glitter cardstock. And you can see I'm left with that circle that I can use on another project and this perfectly cut frame. I'm just going to add a little bit of the Zig two-way glue pen to the back of this frame, and then I'm going to position it over or around that window that I created on my card base. And this is going to create a really nice focal point for this gorgeous flower that I'm going to be using on the inside of the card. So I've put my card into my Misty. This is the full-size Misty here. The full-size Misty allows me to have the entire card base in there, and you can see it's kind of hanging over the top because I've shifted it up a little bit to allow my flower to be all the way in that bottom right-hand corner and kind of hang off a little bit. And I've inked it up with a little bit of VersaFine Onyx Black Pigment ink, and I stamped it in the lower right-hand corner of my card, and that's on the inside of my card. And now I'm going to add some clear embossing powder over the top of this, and then I'm going to heat set it. Now, originally I thought I would watercolor, but I am using the Essentials by Ellen linen cardstock for this card base, and it doesn't take water very well. So instead, I decided to go ahead and stamp this beautiful flower once again onto some vellum and heat emboss it using some clear embossing powder. Now, this stamp I adore, and it is part of a new set coming out from the Essentials by Ellen line, so be sure to keep your eyes peeled. In fact, all of the stamps I'm using today are from the new release that is coming very soon to ellenhudson.com, so you'll get a sneak peek at a lot of the new stamp sets that are coming out. So once I heat embossed that, I flipped the vellum over and I used Copic markers on the back side of that vellum to add a little bit of color to my flower. I used R21 and R22. Now, once I had that flower completely colored, I went ahead and attached it on the inside of my card, and I finished my card off with an embossed sentiment banner on some vellum and a little bit of black and white pattern paper, and of course some sparkling clear sequins from Pretty Pink Posh. So those are our first two techniques, window and frame, and now we're going to be the boss. We are going to use our dies to emboss on our card front here. So I'm going to show you how I do this. I have my Sizzix multi-purpose platform here on the one tab, and then I put down my bottom cutting plate, and now I'm using this silicone rubber mat. This is by Sizzix, and I'm placing that down into my cutting sandwich. And then I'm going to position my cardstock. This is some Neenah Solar White cardstock, and my circle die onto the cardstock with the blade facing down so that it's going to go into that silicone surface. I finished the sandwich off with my top cutting plate, and then I've run that through. And you can see here, this image is now debossed into my cardstock. But if you flip this over, you can then use the embossed version. So that brings me to our next technique today, and that's back it up. We're going to use our dies to create an entire background. Now, I'm embossing this background, but keep in mind, you could also die cut the entire background of your card using various sizes or even the same size, creating a pattern all over your card front and have some really cool effects. I decided to combine both of these techniques into one card, so I'm doing all embossing on this card front, and I'm using various sizes of the circles. These are all from the Circle Stacks 2 die set, and I'm just kind of positioning them to where they kind of overlap. You're going to get a better look at this background when it's completely done. I'm going to hold it up, but I've kind of just created different kind of intersecting rings, and this is going to create a really cool embossed card front for my card. And you can see here, there is all of those circles, and that was the deboss side, but I'm going to flip it over and use the emboss side. So keep in mind that when you are doing this, if you're going to flip it over and use the emboss side, you kind of have to think in the mirror image because you're going to use the back side, so you kind of have to work kind of in that mirror image, kind of backwards type. So instead of having my circles go up and off to the left while I was doing my embossing or debossing, I went up and to the right. Now I've gone ahead and attached this adorable little monkey. I've colored him with Copic markers, and I put a little umbrella in his hand, which is also colored with Copic markers. I'm stamping a sentiment onto that card front, and then I just finished it off with a little black and white pattern paper, and I attached it to a pale rose card base. And that completes my second card project for today, which it combines both embossing with your dies and creating a background with your dies. And I just think this sock monkey is so much fun. Once again, stay tuned because these stamps will be available very soon. Now, last but not least today, I wanted to talk about shaped cards. So we're going to shape it up here. I am going to show you 2 ways to create shaped cards. Now, keep in mind, I'm using circle dies, but you can use any basic die shapes that you may have. And I'm starting out here with a folded card base. And what I'm going to do is position my die to where part of the blade is hanging off the fold. So at the top where that part is hanging off, that is the fold line there. And I'm going to hold that die in place. Once again, I'm going to show you here that that die is hanging over the fold. So as I run this through my die cut machine, I'm not going to cut these pieces completely apart. Only the part that is on the paper is going to cut. So I am left with a circle card here. Now, a lot of people prefer another way, which I'm going to show you here in a minute, because this card is really nice. It opens very nicely, but it does kind of cut off part of your shape there. So you lose a little bit of your shape here on this left-hand side where that fold line was, where you didn't cut through it. But I'm going to show you another way to create a shaped card where you can have the entire shape. So if you had like a heart or something and you had part of that kind of lopped off, it might look kind of funny. But here's how you can get around that. I have the same circle die. This is the largest one from the Circle Stacks one. And I have 2 pieces here. This is not a card base, but rather 2 separate pieces of the white linen cardstock from the Essentials by Ellen line. And I've positioned that onto those cardstock pieces and ran those through the die cut machine. So now I have 2 separate circle pieces here. Now I'm going to bring in my Martha Stewart mini scoreboard and my Teflon bone folder, and I'm going to place just one of these circles onto the scoreboard, and I'm going to score it at about a 1/2 inch. Now I say about because I actually missed. So it's a little less than a 1/2 inch, but no harm, no foul. It's still enough. And when I fold this over, I'm left with this little flap here. Now this flap serves as the fold point, but I want to make sure I have some really strong adhesive. Now I'm just placing it above the fold line on that flap, and I've used some Be Creative tape for this. And then I'll hold those two pieces together and attach them with that strong adhesive. And then I'm left with a folding circle-shaped card here. Isn't that fun? I love to create shaped cards, and I don't do it that often. Now, while I have my die cut machine out, I wanted to go ahead and kind of create a couple layers for this circle card. So I'm using one circle size smaller, and I'm cutting through some vellum here. I guess this technically could be a sixth technique here because I'm creating layers with my nesting shapes, but we're just going to leave it at 5 today. And I'm also going to use the same size circle die that I used to create my card base to cut this black and white striped pattern paper, which I actually made with a background stamp, if you can believe that. And I cut that because all I wanted was a little strip of it. And the reason I cut it with my circle die first is so that I could have the edges of that match up with my circle. Now, I could have just cut a strip and then cut around the circle, but I've done that in the past and I end up cutting through my card base sometimes, or I don't get a perfectly smooth edge on my circle. So I decided to go ahead and just die cut the circle and cut a strip from that to fit the front of my card front there. Now I'm adding some adorable pineapples. These are also from the Essentials by Ellen release that's coming up soon. And I've black heat embossed a sentiment on the front of this layer that I created earlier. I used some VersaFine Black Onyx ink and clear embossing powder to emboss that onto my vellum circle there. And then those pineapples there on the right-hand side give me the perfect place to hide some foam adhesive behind them to attach that circle, that vellum circle, to my card base. Now I finished this off with some sparkling clear sequins and a couple of flowers from that same stamp set. And then I'm adding some black enamel accents to the center of those flowers just for another pop of black. And that completes my circle card for today. Now you'll see here as I open the card up, I'm left with the complete circle. I don't have anything chopped off because I used the second technique to create this card base. That was where I connected both of the circle shapes together and scored one of them to create the opening card. So you can decide which of the shaped card techniques works best for you. Now I wanted to give you a look back at all of the card projects that I created today using the window technique and the frame, embossing and background, and then of course the shaped card technique as well. If you'll head on over to the In Touch blog, I have some more tips on how you can step up these techniques that I've shown you today. And I hope I've inspired you to dig out your basic shapes and get some more use out of them because they really are some of my favorite dies in my crafting stash. As always, I'll have links to all the supplies used in these projects in the description at YouTube. All of these products are available for purchase at ellenhudson.com. Thanks for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed these projects, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.